Okie dokie. What is up, fellas? TheGOOB here for another episode of Rewriting History with me, TheGOOB. Today we're gonna be talking about what is up, fellas. Got the video playing in the background. Here we go. Okay. What is up, fellas? TheGOOB here for another episode of Rewriting History with me. I'm not sure what's going on here. Today we're gonna be talking about what is up, fellas. The video playing in the background. I don't know what is going on. I am so sorry. I don't know what was happening there, so I'm gonna restart the whole Zoom thing. Listen to my intro song. This is what I'm trying to get set up as my intro song. I just haven't had the time to make the graphics to go along with it. Shout out to Nameless Wallaby for providing the intro song. What is up, fellas? TheGOOB, and we're back. So yeah, I want to use that as an intro song. I just need to set up some intro graphics to go along with it. Let me know what you think about it. I think it fits the channel fantastically. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Crash Bandicoot, PlayStation vibes, but also that, Crash Bandicoot, at least I think the second one had a lot of it set in like old Middle East. I don't know. It just seems to fit to me. So let me know what you think. But yeah, we are back with episode 10. I mislabeled the last episode as episode 8. It was episode 9. We're back with episode 10. Last episode, I kind of knew I should have skipped it. I had done so much research, I had taken in so many new facts, and I didn't really have enough time to properly process all of them before the previous episode, so it was a little bit rambly. I'm going to go ahead and summarize very quickly the conclusions that I've come to from all of this research that I've done into ancient Egypt in the last several weeks. And in the background, I will play this video that happened to play in the background just on autoplay last week. And it turned out to be a really fantastic video because what she's doing here is using bone tools, which is slightly unique. It makes sense. I just haven't seen any other videos of people using bone tools. So, she's using pounding stones. She uses no copper to create this vase, which is significant because a lot of the vases, the most significant ones, are produced supposedly pre-Copper Age. But here she's using bone saws and stone pounding tools. So anyways, the conclusions that I've come to from ancient Egypt, there's 3 conclusions. One is that everything you see, except for maybe the vases, but that very impressive black granite Ramses statue, all of the other impressive granite work like the boxes in the Serapeum, everything really is theoretically explainable with the type of toolery that is ascribed to Egypt at that time. So if you look through, there's still some discrepancies. There's still some things that don't necessarily make sense on first glance, like the triads of Menkaure, which are pre-dynastic or maybe first dynasty. I can't remember. Very, 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 very early Egypt, though. And they're some of the most impressive statues to exist. They're giant, full life-size. I think they're actually slightly larger than life-size. I think they're like 7 feet tall or something. Granite statues. There's, I think, 3 statues as well as 3 figures depicted in each statue. And they're known as the triads of Menkaure. And, very, very early on, some of the most impressive work. So as technology improves, the quality of work doesn't necessarily improve, which is a bit of a discrepancy, or, isn't what you would assume to be the case. But everything in Egypt that you see is at least theoretically plausible with the tools assigned to those cultures at those times. Conclusion number 2 is an extension of that, which is that even though it's theoretically feasible, I'm not fully convinced that everything you see is truly a product of those quote-unquote primitive tools. I think there could be some other things going on, whether that be inheritance or whether that be just they had slightly more sophisticated tools slightly earlier than we're giving them credit for. I mean, I never mentioned this, but it was a point I meant to make last week, was the video from Ancient Architects. He suggests that the lost technology of ancient Egypt is emery. emery powder, I think, is like a 9 on the Mohs scale or something like that. And it's nothing, it's very rarely ever talked about. You just don't really hear about emery powder in regards to Egypt. And that could have been the abrasive that was used. That helps explain how all of these tools were made with things like bone, or she even tried wood. She doesn't actually show her attempt here with the wood. She shows that she has some wood pieces, but then it skips over her attempt. I'm guessing the wood didn't work very well. But the bone seemed to work pretty well. And they certainly had bones in ancient Egypt. They had copper slightly later in ancient Egypt, and then bronze after that. So you add emery powder in along with these tools. Maybe it's something as small and as simple as that, as the lost technology of Egypt. But like I said, I'm not completely convinced that what Egyptologists have put forth adequately explain absolutely everything. There probably is a little bit more going on. Maybe it is as simple as emery powder. Maybe it's as simple as emery powder and some other things, simple things like, lathes and stuff like that, which were, who knows? My point is, it's all theoretically possible. I still think there could have been a bit more technology going on. And the third conclusion is that the vases from pre-dynastic Egypt just aren't explained by this type of method. What we're seeing here, or anything else that's been put forward by Egyptologists, there is a level of perfection, less than the width of a human hair across the entire surface of the vase, of deviations off of perfect spherical shapes and stuff like that. It just doesn't add up. A skilled artisan can do a lot. I mean, this is, I assume, her first attempt here, and she actually makes a really incredible recreation. So the idea that skilled artisans can, over hundreds of years of refining their technique and passing it down, can create some really, really, really beautiful and stunning pieces. I totally believe that, but there's still a level of perfection seen in those vases that I just don't see as explainable by hand tools or even primitive, wooden jig setups like this. So that's my conclusions from last week, summarized a bit, hopefully clearer than last week. And then this week, we're going to be talking about, and let me pull up chat just in case anybody is here. They're not yet, but that's okay. Keep an eye on that. This week, we're talking about Chinese pyramids, the Boyscast, and censorship. A few other little things as well. But how many of you have heard of the Chinese pyramids? I'm curious. Did you know China had pyramids? I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end of this video here just so you can see the final product, and then I'll continue talking about. And there's her recreation versus, an ancient version. And in some ways, hers looks a little bit better, honestly. So it looks a little more even around the top. Like, yeah, she definitely proved that with bone and stone tools, you can create something like that. So my YouTube feed has been chock full. Sorry, I'm just holding my phone in an awkward angle there. My YouTube feed has been chock full of people working granite, and I've been watching a lot of those videos, and yeah, led me to the conclusions that I just stated. So I did not have time to pull up absolutely anything, unfortunately, for this episode. I barely got the thumbnail made. I was grabbing water while I played that song. It's been a busy week for me. But try and pull up some images of these Chinese pyramids. So there's a few different things going on with Chinese pyramids, right? So there are these pyramids that have been cited. They have been photographed, and they've kind of been denied by the Chinese government. And the government is, you can see those trees are planted in rows. They are deliberately planting trees on these pyramids. They're trying to cover up these pyramids. They're trying to hide them. In a few years, you won't even recognize them as pyramids because they will be covered in a tiny, forest. So there are also other pyramids that China does acknowledge. And then there's the somewhat mythical, I say mythical just because we don't have any hard evidence of it, but there's several sightings and reports of a great white pyramid that was 1,000 feet tall and topped with a white gemstone north of Xi'an. Yeah. And north of Xi'an, the Chinese government has, and so these reports of the Great White Pyramid, they come from World War II, and another pilot that had a plane malfunction and had to reroute and detour. They flew north of Xi'an, China, and they reported seeing this massive, beautiful, great white pyramid, and surrounding it were hundreds of other pyramids. It was a massive complex of pyramids in the area. And the Chinese government actually does confirm that there are over 400 pyramids north of Xi'an, but they don't confirm the Great White Pyramid. So is that another pyramid that's being covered up by the Chinese government? Is it just myth? It's really hard to say because China does like their secrets, and they also like to lie. It's hard to determine what is true and what's not over in China. But they do have a lot of pyramids, and there have been journalists. I might try and pull up a video on YouTube. Again, I haven't had time, so it would just be me searching through YouTube. But there are people who have gone over there and recorded these pyramids. And yeah, there's older footage from before the trees were on them, and then there's newer footage with the Chinese government clearly trying to plant trees to cover up their existence. Yeah, I have no idea which of these videos would be good to play in the background because I unfortunately just haven't had time to do that. But let's go ahead and pick one. I pull this chat up again. So yeah, just like the Chinese government is highly censored, I think a lot of people don't realize just how censored we are here in the United States as well. And this was actually talked about on the Boyscast this week on Saturday. In their most recent episode, they had an entire section dedicated to losing touch with reality and everybody lying. And they dedicated an entire section just to basically repeatedly saying that you can't trust anything. Everything is a lie. Absolutely everything is a lie. You can't trust any of it. So how do you even function in this world where, you're forced to question everything if you're a rational person? And that is a point that I've been trying to make throughout this series. I reference dating. I reference how modern humans are 300,000 years old. I reference how the Sahara Desert was a rainforest 7,000 years ago, and all of these other kinds of facts. And there's very little to actually back up a lot of these facts. Not necessarily those facts in particular, it's just those types of facts, these things that are just kind of well accepted. You know, the layered Roman roads, like someone says these things somewhere upon a time and they just start getting repeated and they become a fact and they become well accepted, like the Big Bang and the universe being 13 and a half years old and dark matter and all of this stuff. And we really don't actually have any solid evidence to draw these conclusions most of the time. And we as lay people have no way of testing these claims. So people just accept them and they get repeated over and over and over again. And they become a part of the zeitgeist and the sphere of facts and science. But you really do have to question all of this stuff. And in order to function in life, you kind of do have to assume that all of this stuff is true. But then as a rational person, in the back of your head, you have to kind of keep that secondary thought that, well, maybe it isn't actually based in anything real. But, you know, I wouldn't even be able to have these conversations with you. I wouldn't even be able to discuss history and question it and stuff if I literally questioned everything all the time. You do have to take some of these things and just kind of roll with them, unfortunately. But I do encourage everyone in the back of their head, you know, the Sahara Desert being a rainforest 7,000 years ago. Yeah, that's a fact. But how do we actually know that, you know? Coal being 50 million year old dinosaurs rotting in the earth. That's a fact. But how do we actually know that? I don't know, you know, and I do plan on doing a specific OOP art, out of place artifact episode here soon, but I'll just quickly mention, like, there's a chariot wheel that was found, and I say chariot wheel, it could have been a wagon wheel, whatever, that type of wooden wheel, you know, that was found in a coal mine. I think like 130 feet down in the earth, maybe even deeper than that. I'm not sure, but you know, it's supposed to be like 50 million years old, and fossils don't form that quickly, like within the time period of chariot wheels supposedly existing. And so it's like something's going on there. So one of our facts along the way is not correct. Either humanity's been around far, far, far longer than we think, or there was some other type of civilization before humanity potentially, or coal doesn't actually take 50 million years to form. Like, something along the lines there is amiss. I don't know which one exactly is incorrect, but just something to keep in mind, you know. Listen to that Boyscast episode. It's a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend it. I assume that all of my listeners are already tuned in to Danny Polishchuk's content, because that's kind of where I got my start on the internet, was through him. So I assume you're already listening to the Boyscast, but if not, go check out the Boyscast. At the very least, go check out the segment. I think it's titled Losing Touch with Reality. So in that same vein, censorship is a real problem. And I'm going to see if I can give you an example of that right now. Gunang Padang is, so Gunang Padang, I tried very hard to find this thing on Google, and it was absolutely impossible. I had to go to Yandex and search for there because I couldn't remember the exact name, Gunang Padang. And this site here is in Indonesia, and for over a decade now, there have been archaeologists claiming that this site is over 50,000 years old. That there are, the surface layer is much more recent, but if you go down, this mountain essentially is artificially made. It is man-made over many millennia. There's many phases of work, and the earliest and lowest phases are supposedly over 50,000 years old. If you try and search Indonesia, Sacred Mound, 50,000 years old, basalt pillars, these are all descriptors of Gunang Padang, you will not find it. It doesn't matter how many pages deep you go. It doesn't matter how you mess with the descriptors. It does not show up. The degree of censorship on Google is astounding. There's a channel that I really enjoy called MindUnveiled. I do not necessarily support his theories. Wow, that was really quick, it seems like. Has it already been that long? Wow, I've been talking for a minute. Okay. Try and get that, sorry. So MindUnveiled is a fantastic channel if you like well-researched, very out there conspiracy theories, fun, based in good, sound research and logic, but not necessarily true at all. Again, I'm not supporting his theories, at least not most of them. But as far as just a fun channel, really highly recommend MindUnveiled. But he also does good research. And one of his videos, he's talking about theaters. And I forget the ancient goddess that the name actually was. I'm just going to say Athena. I don't think it was, but I'm just going to say Athena for convenience sake. And so if you go onto Google and you search oldest theater in America, you get a certain result. If you then go by state and you go oldest theater in Alaska, oldest theater in Alabama, etc., right? You get different results. Some of those results are older than the oldest theater in America, which doesn't quite make sense. And then if you go by city, you get even different results. Some of those older still. And then if you have the specific name of this theater, which I'm saying is Athena Theater, it was some other goddess, but Athena Theater. If you start Googling Athena Theater and then specific cities, you now see that these theaters were all over America in a lot of cities, and they all are older than any of the previous results just listed by Google. So in order to get actual information from Google nowadays, you already have to know exactly what you're looking for. You have to know the words Gunang Padang. You cannot find it through other search means. If you know what you're talking about, but not the exact words, you're not going to find it. Same with these theaters, these Athena theaters. If you know what you're talking about, if you're looking for it, you're directly searching for that answer. But if you don't know the name already, that it's Athena Theaters, you're not going to find it. It's not going to show up on Google. And I think a lot of people have kind of completely missed the fact that chicken alarm. You've completely missed the fact that we are being censored to a degree of the CCP, and maybe even greater, because in the CCP, it's open censorship. Everyone knows they're being censored. And so people are able to react appropriately. Some people just accept it and they just go, I'm being censored. That is what it is. Other people might take steps to navigate around that censorship. Other people might go, okay, I know I'm being censored, so I have to interpret this information that I'm seeing differently because I know I'm seeing it through the lens of censorship. But in America, people still have this idea that the internet is this bastion of freedom and this repository of all knowledge, and that it's freely accessible knowledge to anyone and everyone. And honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. What's up, Galunis? Good to see you here. And so I think that in a way, the censorship in America is even worse than the CCP, because I would argue it truly is to the same extent. The level of censorship is equivalent, but we have the illusion of freedom here. And so people aren't treating the information they're seeing as if it's censored information. So they're going, oh, this is the truth. This is all of the truth. This is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. And it's not. So I would argue that China and Chinese people are actually in a better situation, marginally so, with their censorship because they're aware of it. But it's very, very much real here. It's very present. I just gave a quick couple examples with Google. That's hardly the only way that we're being censored, but that's a really significant one. And yeah, just again, check out the Boyscast segment. They sum up what I want to say very well. Everyone is lying. It's all bullshit. Everything is a lie. You can't trust anything. Yeah, I'd love to check it out. I have been really busy lately. I don't know when I'll have time, but send it over. I'd appreciate it, even if I don't get the time to check it out, which hopefully I do. I would appreciate it anyways. So I want to talk about a few other things as well. I had just a channel I wanted to shout out. I did have a larger point with this channel, but okay, right, yeah. So the Americas. I want to move away from Egypt a little bit. I've been talking about Egypt a lot, and a lot of cool stuff in Egypt. I'll be talking about the bases again some more, certainly. But there's a lot more in the world of rewriting history than just Egypt, or even India, which I've also talked about a bit. So I've mentioned China a little bit, and China... Excuse me. China, the Zhang Yu, I think, there's some Chineseologists. I really don't know what they're called. Egyptologists are a thing, so are Chineseologists a thing? I don't know. Chinologists? Something like that. They're now claiming that their civilization goes back 10,000 years, which honestly is very believable to me. You also have the Longyu Caves, which I'll try and pull up some footage from Wandering Wolf. I've recommended his channel before. He just has some good... He's just had some good footage of these caves, and many other sites. The Longyu Caves are interesting because the Chinese government, and again emphasizing that you can't trust the Chinese government, you can't trust anyone, but the Chinese government is claiming that these are very old, and that all of these carvings, you just saw some of them there, that dragon on the side, are contemporary with the caves. I'm extremely skeptical of that claim, and I'll try and show you why here. There's no written record of these caves. No one actually knows when they're from or when they were made. Here we go. Here's some good... So you can see in the rest of this video that the entire caves are covered with chisel marks. There's rough chisel marks across the entire cave. You see that's how all of these caves look. There's many of these caves. I think like 40 or so. But then in one or two of these caves, they have these carvings. And if you look at these carvings, they look rather modern. I mean, that is Chinese culture right there. There's no doubt that those caves are Chinese culture, but these are potentially many thousands of years old, and that's, while not directly stated, what's clearly hinted by the Chinese government, that these are potentially 10,000 years old, potentially older, at least like 5,000 years old. But these are extremely modern looking. I mean, that's a very long time for a single civilization to hold the exact same aesthetics. But, if Chinese culture does go back 10,000 years, or Chinese civilization does go back 10,000 years, who knows? It's really hard to know anything solid about China, just because they are so openly propagandists, So that's enough about China. Back to America. The Americas are a site that really, really need rewriting. And CFapps 7865, rest in peace. He passed away a few years ago. But he really liked to find sites in America, and specifically North America, that weren't fully explained by mainstream history. And he has some really great videos. He did some really great research. I'm gonna go ahead and relaunch Zoom in case anybody would like to call in. I will, give me just a moment here while I do this. You guys know I'm not the best at multitasking, so open up that. And then I will post the invite link in chat in just a second, so if anyone would like to join, they can. And again, you don't have to share your face to share your opinion. Anyone is welcome to call in, whether they agree, disagree, just want to talk about something else entirely. As long as it is history related, that's a-okay. Alrighty, there we go. And there we go. All right. Get the invite link. And see if my video even shows up on my own channel. It often does not like to. Oh, look at that. It's there. Good news. Okay. Here's the new link for the Zoom meeting. If anyone, yeah, I'm sorry about the, I someday I will buy Zoom so I don't have to do this every single episode. I know it's a bit silly, but you can't buy it by the month, and it's like $160. So I'm cheap, and this channel is small. Are they Fourth Dynasty? Okay, I couldn't. Thank you, Leeside. I knew they were early. I couldn't recall. I thought they were First Dynasty, but Fourth also sounds right. So appreciate that. So CFapps, yeah, I just recommend his channel. I will probably try and dedicate an episode to rewriting America, but it's wildly off the narrative that we've been fed. Columbus coming here in 1492 or whenever the hell it was. I honestly don't even know if that's the right date. He was not the first. He wasn't even close to the first. There were all kinds of people over here. There's a lot you can find on the internet with some quick Google searches, even with all of the censorship, although it is getting harder and harder and harder to find these references. So I will share a personal story from a guy I was talking to in a bar. I was talking to this guy in a bar, and he claimed, these are all his claims, I can't verify any of them, but it seemed truthful. He claimed he was an archaeologist, and he was just getting back from a dig. I don't remember the state, but the Lakota tribe. He was digging a Lakota burial mound, and as they were getting deeper and deeper into this mound, and as they were discovering more and more things, him and the other archaeologists were, going, this is looking less and less like a Native American burial mound and more like a Welsh burial mound. And they actually got to the point where they recovered some skeletons, they recovered some bodies, and they had taken them to labs. But the Lakota tribe had gotten wind of this looking like a Welsh burial mound rather than a Lakota burial mound. And so before they were able to do DNA testing on the skeletons, on the remains, which they were intending to do, the Lakota tribe came in and shut it the F down. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Native Americans have all kinds of rights as to their sacred sites, and so it's their burial mound. They get to say what goes on. They were ready to do DNA testing in the lab, and they said, no, you're not. You are not doing any testing. You are not digging anymore. We are taking this over. You are getting the hell out of here. You're not doing a single thing more. This is kaput, because they got wind that it was actually Welsh looking rather than Lakota. And so this is just going towards building another one of my arguments, which is that there are many, many, many mechanisms for hiding history, and for why we don't have an accurate picture of history. And if you look up Welsh burial mounds in North America, you'll find other reports, but I thought this one was really interesting because this wasn't just a report on the internet. This was some guy I met in a bar, and could he have been lying? Sure, but it didn't seem like it. And he really seemed frustrated at the fact that he was shut down. So anyways, where I had a very deliberate next step to that point. And I kind of lost my train of thought. So there's Indian, Native Americans, they can shut down right. Another local personal story. So there was a bridge being built near me, and in the process of building the bridge, they drilled into an anchor that was 200 years old. It wasn't even that old of an anchor. It was like a 200-year-old anchor, and they drilled into the anchor in the process of drilling pylons for the bridge, and it shut down the project for 18 months. Wasn't even that, in my opinion, it wasn't even that significant of a find. It was a 200-year-old anchor. I'm not personally invested in that. I couldn't really care less about a 200-year-old anchor. I didn't think it was worth shutting down a project for 18 months, a multi-million-dollar project, So yeah, on CFapps, he has a lot of examples. CFapps has a lot of examples of things here in North America that have been destroyed by construction. He's done his research really well, and he has pictures and evidence and proof of these burial mounds and walls and other things that have been destroyed by construction. And, some of it certainly is a tragedy. But when you have a nearly 2-year delay for a 200-year-old anchor, I completely understand why these companies go, yeah, just shut the fuck up and tear it down. Don't say a word. And there's so many avenues for destruction, and hiding of evidence. I talked a little bit about China, and I didn't even mention this part, but one of the theories as to why some of these pyramids are being covered up is because the mummies found in them weren't Chinese. So you get this a lot with Egyptology, you get this a lot with China. There's this strong national image. They really want to identify it with their people. So, you know, there's racial motivations. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the we wuzzing on lines. All of the races do it. It's not unique to any race. Everyone does it. You know, we was Kangs. So there's so many avenues for hiding and covering up and just straight up destroying the history of the world. So yeah, history. I as I come more in line with mainstream history, I'm also more solidified in my assertion that history needs rewritten, and a hell of a lot of it, not just ancient Egypt, but pretty much all of American history, you know, and a lot of other histories. So, final segment here, just an update in the Cataclysm world, an update in the Spicy Sun and weakening magnetic field world. We had very recently volcanoes everywhere. If you guys heard about this, I feel like it was fairly big news. You may have, even though most of you probably aren't following this in your news feeds. There were hundreds of volcanoes all over the world, like a week ago, roughly, something like that. Volcanoes and earthquakes. The world was going absolutely crazy. So many volcanoes going off, so many earthquakes going off. At the same time, the northern lights are coming further and further and further south. They're getting more and more active. Yeah, it's really hard to say, the Aquarian. You know, I personally, just specifically with the Great Pyramid here, but I kind of agree in general with your statement, but specifically with the Great Pyramid, the idea of it being Khufu's burial chamber does not seem outlandish to me at all. The fact that you're not finding a body in there 4,500 years later, the fact that these pyramids are like the most obvious, greatest feature on the plateau, and they would have been visible to everyone for thousands of years. That's the center of, you know, civilization, right next to it for thousands of years. Someone's going in there. Someone's taking that body. It makes no sense that you would find a body in there 4,500 years ago. So I just don't write it out. But yeah, it is really hard to say what exactly those pyramids were used for, whether they were, and I'm sure even if they weren't originally used for burial chambers, I bet some bodies were stuck in there. They've been around for thousands of years. Someone probably went, hey, this would be a good place to stick a body, you know? So who knows? It really is hard to say. But yeah, grand solar minimum, the galactic magnetic sheath is, you know, we're traveling through it. Our magnetic field is weakening. We sure seem to be on track for that 12,000 year cyclical cataclysm. Which, you know how I feel about carbon dating, Leeside. It's not useless, but it's certainly not something I trust. But yeah, you know, volcanoes, solar activity, lights in the sky, all of the kinds of things that ancient civilizations talk about at their reset, all of the kinds of things that the Bible kind of talks about and says is going to happen. And I'm not going to get into it this week. I want to dedicate an episode to religion, but we haven't seen the gods in a very long time. But they're prophesied to come back with the end times and after the reset to, restart the world. And we might be seeing gods again soon because we're seeing a lot of the other stuff we're supposed to be seeing. So, yeah, sun's getting spicy, magnetic field's getting weak, things are about to get interesting. And that is the episode, folks. I talked about this slightly earlier, Leeside. There's no way to function in this world without so the way I try and navigate and the way I suggest you guys navigate, and I mean, feel free to ignore this by all means, but you kind of have to assume on some level that all of this stuff is true. You kind of have to work off the basis that all of these facts we're told are facts. But then in the back of your head, keep in mind that these facts are quite possibly based on little to nothing, kind of like the layered Roman roads or the 13-and-a-half-year-old universe or dark matter. All of this stuff, they're things that you can't easily verify, and so someone says them somewhere along the line, and then some people start repeating them, and then they just become fact and truth, even though they quite often are not. So you do, just to be able to have a conversation, just to be able to navigate the world, you do have to kind of work off the assumption that these facts are facts. It's very difficult to talk about anything if you just assume literally everything is a lie. But at the same time, you do kind of in the back of your head have to assume that everything is a lie. You do have to question everything. So it's difficult to manage that. It's not too difficult for me, but yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Leeside. So why do I trust the dating of Göbekli Tepe? I don't necessarily, but until I have something better to work off of, I kind of have to assume it's true. So yeah, as I was just saying, that's the episode, folks. Gonna wrap it up there, and thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next week. Let me know what you think of the intro song. If you like that, if you think I should take the time and effort to put some graphics to it and add that to the show. But I will see you guys next week. Peace out. If I can, peace out. I always struggle with this part.